By James. All those in favour say aye. Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. All right, Helen, welcome.
We've got a short presentation for you before we get into the report proper. Right, thank you.
Microphone on. Thank you.
Cheers. Okay, good morning everybody. Before we get into the bi-monthly report as usual, because this is the last Three Waters Infrastructure and Environment Committee meeting for the year, I just wanted to look back on two aspects of our work. First, the capital delivery and our planning function, and the second, the quality and compliance function, which has grown and matured over the last 3 years. So for planning and delivery, we've got the three main areas of work. So the wastewater is where the largest of our capital programs sits, and alongside a large program of mains renewals, which aren't all that obvious to people except when we close their streets or make them one way for a certain period. We've got a number of particularly significant achievements. So the first one is the Littleton Harbour Wastewater Scheme. So that means that the discharge of treated wastewater effluent to Littleton Harbour will cease in the middle of this year. So the discharge from Governor's Bay has already stopped. The discharge from Diamond Harbour has stopped, and at the moment the last one will be from the Littleton treatment plant. And we have 3 new pump stations in place and all of the pipe work to bring that back through the tunnel and across to our main Christchurch wastewater treatment plant. So that will be a great achievement. The second one is the Akaroa wastewater treatment plant, and we have an interim discharge consent for that plant to operate until 2030, and during that time we will build the new plant and of course develop the areas for the irrigation of the treated wastewater, which you're very familiar with. Devotional wastewater is the next one to tackle, and we've got options for disposal to land out for consultation at the moment, so that one will come back through to council. A couple of other things that are really important in the wastewater area is improving the monitoring of our vacuum systems, and we've brought that in-house and onto our own telecommunications, which enables us to have better control of that. And we're putting in a variation for our wet weather discharge consent. And you'll recall a memo and a bit of a presentation on the wastewater overflows during wet weather events, where we've managed the volumes down considerably over the last few years, and there's still some frequency issues in terms of the consent that we need to talk to Environment Canterbury about. There's a whole lot of ongoing work in the vacuum sewer systems. We're planning, of course, for the new development that will happen through the district plan changes and meeting that national policy statement for urban development. We've got a lot of infrastructure planning underway in terms of the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan. We're doing some work with Environment Canterbury and Wairua on septic tank consents out at Birdlings Flat and what the long-term outcome is in Birdlings Flat. What is the best approach to wastewater treatment there? And of course the options assessment for what we do instead of the trickling filters, whether we replace trickling filters or do something else out at the wastewater treatment plant in terms of that secondary treatment process. So there's a lot of construction work going on out there, and there's a lot of thinking about the future still going on in the wastewater sector. So next to water supply. Once again, we've done an enormous amount in terms of mains, sub-mains, laterals and water meter replacements, and also done a lot in the backflow prevention area. So those all happen and mostly are unseen, however very important to the security of the network. More significant ones that people will notice: the Jeffreys pump station, which was, of course, the suction tank was damaged in the earthquakes. We've finally shut that pump station down, and we're redoing the suction tank and upgrading the pump station itself. At Blythe, we've started drilling for the well renewal up there. Spraydon pump station well renewing again. The drilling has started. Reservoir inspections, you'll remember we've got the rolling program. Originally it was a 5-year rolling program, and we're trying to do that in 3 years, so we've compressed it and we're trying to accelerate through those reservoir and tank inspections. Kokorarata, we've been working with the runanga over there and supporting them in terms of exploring water supply options and just helping them out with sealing off some springs that were unearthed. And then it was difficult to shut them down again. We have the water supply and wastewater management needs assessment that has been completed, and we'll bring that to you in a briefing so that you get an understanding of that. That's mostly for small settlements across Banks Peninsula. And of course we've done the work for the Ministry of Health on what it would take to add fluoride to our water supply. Christchurch is a challenging water supply for fluoride because of course we have the 52 pump stations rather than one single treatment plant. So it's a more expensive exercise than for most towns. In the same way, we're looking at infrastructure planning to support the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan. We've got our rezoning work that's underway and the smart water network being trialled out in Rāwhiti. And on to stormwater. Now, stormwater is, of course, a lot more obvious, and up on the top right there you can see the Eastman Sutherland's basins and wetlands. So we're spending around 30 million in the top of the Opawaho Heath catchment and planting hundreds of thousands of plants and shrubs, trees and shrubs up there. A lot of that area is already open to the public and there's more to come, so people really enjoy it. Lots of people think it's just a really posh dog park, I think, rather than a stormwater and flood attenuation system, but it's extraordinarily effective, and some of it, of course, has already been used in storm events. We have had a few challenges to program delivery, particularly in the stormwater area. So that is not going as well as in the water supply and wastewater. However, we should pick it up over the next few months, particularly the planting. In the bottom left there, you can see the big pump station that picks up at the bottom end of Dudley Creek and goes into the Avon, and that's the Archimedes screw. And you can almost see the figure of a person right at the bottom of that. So that's an enormous pump station there in terms of the lift required to get the water up and over and into the river. And at the bottom there we've got the Otakaro Avon River Corridor and the Waitaki Stopbanks Basins, Wetlands, Cycleways and Landscaping, which has begun. There has been a short pause on site there because we did encounter buried asbestos from the demolition works that took place following the red zoning and the demolition of the houses there. So we're just working on containing that. The other area that's really important in our sort of planning and delivery is asset management, and that's the area where we put together the briefs for future years. So make sure that conveyor belt of projects keeps running through, and planning right through to financial years 24 and 25. They're also supporting some of the upgrades around the Naval Point development over in Littleton and the multi-use arena, of course. One of the other areas of work that is keeping the team extraordinarily busy is the backlog of as-built information that's coming through from our contractors. So once the work is finished, we've got to pick up all that information and get it into our corporate data sets. So there's a huge amount of work in there, and we're playing catch-up. So moving to quality and compliance. Now, quality and compliance used to be a relatively small part of Three Waters, and now has its own dedicated team. And that's in response to the increased regulation for water supply and stormwater particularly, and in anticipation of increased regulation in the wastewater area as well. So the new team was set up in 2020 and looks after our resource consents, where the main point of contact, of course, is Environment Canterbury, but also looks after the water safety plans, where the point of contact is Taumata Arawai. So the quality and compliance function goes right across the water supply, wastewater and stormwater. It also begins in design, through capital delivery and across operations. So the compliance work goes across all aspects of our business, and the team members in here are being cross-skilled so that they can work across the three waters and across the parts of the business. And a lot of that is because we need to be ready to respond to incidents. So if we have an incident, we need to be able to get people out in the field, do the monitoring and follow-up that's required, do the instant investigation work, and then put in place the improvement plans. In terms of the water safety plans, these are produced in-house, and we maintain these are living documents, so we update them as required. For the Christchurch water safety plan, that's probably our biggest and most complex. We'd probably update that every month as new infrastructure comes in or there's a change in the way that we operate our network. For the smaller water supplies, they are more stable and not updated quite as often, but there's a water safety plan for all of our community water supplies. One of the things that we're doing here is that we have a very proactive approach to our water safety plans, and we have a program of internal audits to ensure that we know that we've got compliance. Three waters consent. So the council holds that 486 resource consents with Environment Canterbury, and 274 of them are within our unit. So we have coastal permits, we have water discharge permits, we have land use consents, and we have water take permits. So we have a very large number of permits. A lot of them are small and short term and associated with particular capital projects, but there's some really big important ones. So the first one is we have a single comprehensive take consent for the City Council's water supply. So that's 154 wells that we take water from our community water supply. And a lot of those wells have particular provisions around how much we can take, what rate we can take it from, and particular monitoring. For example, the ones out east, we need to monitor for saltwater intrusion. The ones up in the northwest, we were monitoring for nitrates until we did the deepening program. But each of those wells and each of the aquifers has its own monitoring program to check on any trends and any changes. The next biggest set of consents is for wastewater discharge. The largest, of course, is the one at Bromley, and it goes out through that 3 kilometre ocean outfall off New Brighton Beach. The next one is Littleton, and of course that one will be surrendered once the wastewater comes back through the tunnel and into the main Christchurch plant, and then we've got a handful of smaller ones, Wainui, Tika Bay, Devotial and Akaroa. The next important consent in there is the wastewater overflow discharge consent, and that means that we monitor the overflow events, and we have a big planning program for reducing those wastewater overflows, and then of course the capital program that comes in behind it to address the high priority upgrades required. And finally, the comprehensive stormwater network discharge consent, which is one of our newest consents, and the whole point of this, of course, is to improve the health of our waterways. We have, under this consent, we have restoration projects. So we're improving the waterway itself and the habitat, and also the treatment systems through the basins and bespoke treatment devices to improve the water quality. This is the area where we most engage with the community. So it's pretty hard to engage with the community on a sewer main upgrade, let alone ask anybody's help. But in the stormwater area and the waterways, the community is very active and involved, and the stream care groups across the city are a great help. And that leads us into the Community Waterways Partnership, which was initiated under this consent and contributes to this consent. And there's a big focus on getting children involved. So the next generation, of course, understand what it takes to keep those waterways healthy, because the best approach is to stop anything getting into them, rather than clean it up on its way or once it's there. So I'm happy to take any questions on that or on the report.
Fantastic, Helen. That was brilliant. Thank you very much. It shows you the enormity of your portfolio. And it'd be even more eye-watering if you'd attached dollar figures to some of those projects, because some of those are in the millions. So are there any questions for Helen? Mel? And then Jimmy?
I just wanted to know if we wanted another water supply well, for instance, do we need to update the consent? Like, how does that work?
Yes, we update the consent, but we don't have to get a new consent.
Right. Okay.
So we have a comprehensive consent, and within that consent we have a total take, and we're not up to that total take, so we've still got capacity in that consent.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Jimmy?
On page 71, you have the Denton suction tank and suction tank. One is nearly completion. The other one will be commenced in July. I just want to know these two, the suction tank, whether it's part of the drinking water safety plan or not. It's outside.
Yes, they're covered by the drinking water safety plan. So the reservoir and suction tank program is part of the water safety plan and the improvement program under the water safety plan.
Okay, that's good. But if that's true, but when the Denton suction tank completed, whether continue, back to the to connect directly, because at the moment it's bypass.
That's right. At the moment we've
They
got
will
bypass.
connect.
Yes.
Okay, but how about how much percentage of the doors for those coordinate? Still 0.2 continually.
It'll still be 0.2 until
Yes.
we've got all of the suction tanks in that zone up to standard.
So you mean it's the tournament otherwise? The new assessor need to assessment or not?
No, we assess it ourselves.
Okay, not necessary for them. Okay, thank you.
Tim?
Yeah, Helen, thank you. Great report, and thanks for the work you're doing. And it's really good that we've got the two officers now with regards to the sediment control. And thanks to everyone so that's now been confirmed in the annual plan, which is great. But on page 98 or 52, depending on which pages numbers you're going with, but it just seems to start off that ECAN and us were going to share the cost of these two officers. But I'm just wondering, is that the case? Because it just reads at the end of it on 5.1 in the conclusion that it doesn't seem to be. I'm just wondering.
No, it's not co-funded with Environment Canterbury, so we're funding the sediment and erosion control officers ourselves. However, we are working closely with Environment Canterbury to ensure that we have complementary education programs.
Because they've got to be warranted by ECAN, and they've got to be dual warranted. Is that right?
No, I think these ones will be warranted under the they may be warranted as building inspectors as well, or they could get a warrant under the new bylaw. So remember, we've got a new bylaw coming, and under the new stormwater bylaw, we're updating all of the warrants for our officers.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So just, Tim, just going on from that, in 4.3 and 4.4, it does say this role was not progressed. So maybe that's a different role. It was considered that the warranted enforcement officer role would be co-funded with Environment Canterbury. Council would provide location work and there'd be half share of it, full-time employer 234 over 3 years. And then they're saying this role was not progressed due to several factors.
That's right. So that's just a bit of a history of how it evolved. And now we have our own officers that will be appointed and a new bylaw which responds to the requirements of the new comprehensive discharge consent.
So someone had to do it, but it seemed no one was doing it, so we've picked it up. So, yeah. But somewhere along the line, it just seemed that the funding has fallen on us rather than shared. But but the important thing is that it's been approved, we're doing it, which is the key thing. And maybe we can, whoever's got the best contact in with ECAN, kind of wonder where their 50% fell off.
Yeah, it's disappointing, isn't it? Thanks, Tim. Phil?
Yeah, thanks, Helen. Down where you had those, Archimedes screw pumps down at Dudley Creek, New Brighton Road, where it goes out to the river, needs to be fixed. But I understand the pipes under there are in a bit of stress. Or so that's from what I'm told. New Brighton Road can't be fixed in that point because the pipes underneath are failed.
I'd have to go back and check with the project manager.
I talked to Transport and I said, why aren't we doing this little bit of road? And they said, that if you wouldn't mind checking it out for me, that'd be good, because it'd be one might lead to another. And when the Sydenham tank, which is cool, and I see the price here, That's nearly the same price as the whole Benrare pump station and tank. Is that why would that be, please?
Sorry, which one? The Sydenham?
The Sydenham tank, Benrare's 7 million, and the Sydenham tank's more or less the same, but it's just a little bit less. But there's no pump station with that there. Is it? It seems to be quite a lot just for the tank. Is there a reason?
So there's a very large tank going in there.
Lot bigger.
So 500 cubic metre tank.
Okay.
And there are very poor ground conditions there. So I don't know if you've ever stood on that corner of Broome
Yes.
when a big truck's gone past and the ground shakes like this. So a part of the cost is ensuring that the ground is
A lot of weight going on. Yeah. And in the long run, when the Jeffreys Road one is finished, because it's a new pump station and tank, the same as Benrare, and it's just mainly for the people that are listening. When we did the Benrare one, you said that there's no chlorine going into Benrare because it's a new pump station, new suction tank, and we've got all our
all the backflows resolved.
yeah.
Yes.
How far away from because Jeffreys Road's going to be a new pump station, new tank, have we got a few issues with the backflow preventers that stops us putting the chlorine? My question is, are we going to put chlorine into the Jeffreys Road one when we start it up in a year's time?
Now, I need to
Or
check.
could we not?
I need to check the network map, but I think Jeffreys is in the west zone, and if it's in the west zone and everything's up to standard, then no.
Cool. Okay. Because we can't at the moment because it's today. No, that's good. Thank you very much, Joe.
Thanks. Helen, I've got a question on the septic tanks there in Birdling's Flat. And it's on page 32. I don't know what the other page is. So currently there's 45 active consents, 18 of which are expiring this year, and 120 operating without consent because they didn't require one. So what's happening there? I know it's kind of like you've put like it's a work in progress between agencies like Environment Canterbury and us, but so is that contaminating the water out there because it's so low to have a septic tank?
So there's been some work done between ourselves, Environment Canterbury, and the Runanga to look at what the best wastewater solution there is long term. So at the moment, the septic tanks are over the last 10 years, septic tanks have been consented and gone in, and the groundwater modelling would imply that the groundwater is coming back out towards the coast rather than going inland and towards the lake, which would be of major concern.
Right.
However, there's more work that needs to be done to confirm that and to have a full understanding of where that groundwater is moving. And we want to do that work with Environment Canterbury.
So is there like a timeline for that work? Do you know?
It's underway at the moment.
Yeah, but I mean for completion, how long are we looking at?
No, I don't have a timeline for completion for that.
Could be years.
No, I don't think it'll be years. We want to get it resolved so that we can make decisions, or so that Environment Canterbury can make decisions on consents for new septic tanks. Otherwise, people can't build.
Yeah. So it might be good if that work was included somewhere in these reports. I mean, not monthly, but maybe quarterly, I think. And then I just had one more question on page 8, and you talk about the risks to our chlorination, requiring our chlorination, and you've got the 1, 2, 3, 4, but you say the corrective action includes ongoing chlorine treatment for 2 of these risks until they're satisfactorily addressed. So we've addressed the jointed lead pipes, we've addressed the backflow, and the number 4, the civil earthquake, is just what it is. So are you saying that the 2 are contained in number 1, which is the cracks in the roof and the below ground walls and the reservoirs? Or have I got that completely wrong? I can't see being 2 out of 4 in there.
All right, so that was the previous water safety plan and an update on that. So the reservoirs is 1. the wells are also, of course, one of the. So the two here are the reservoirs and tanks and the backflow that would require chlorine. However, yes, backflow has now been resolved. So we're going to update our water safety plan, and the new one won't have backflow as an unacceptable risk,
Great, that's where it is. Okay.
and nor will it have the lead coming from those lead jointed pipes.
Yep, that's good. So that's just a lag in the reporting. And then also at the top of that page, you've got more studies and work will be required to comply with the least compliance rule, draft compliance rules. So how long is that going to take?
That's for the source water.
Yep.
So most of the source water compliance work for Christchurch is more or less complete. So we've got all of the modelling work, and we've done the monitoring that we're required to do in terms of age dating those wells. What we now need to do is make sure that the source water work on Banks Peninsula is up to the standard required. However, it's nowhere near as complex as for Christchurch. So over there we generally have a number of stream water supplies and some bores.
Great. Oh, that's good. Thank you. Yanni.
Thanks. I was just wondering, on page 76, it talks about the response times, the water and the wastewater. It talks about the contractor being hit hard with COVID, and also the high number of job volumes. Do you know what sort of the benchmark would be to get back to a more regular state of jobs that were required? Like, I'm just trying to understand, I guess, in terms of the 1,762 that have been reported for April and the sort of trend, where we ideally, if there is such a thing as like back to normal, we would get to where we wouldn't be having a high number of jobs.
So we can't control the number of job requests that come in, so they are reactive.
Right.
So that's 1,762. We need to respond to all of those and resolve them.
Do you know how it tracks compared to, say, last year or the previous 5 years, like what the trend is?
I can get that for you if you like.
I think that would be quite useful. I know that when I look at the response times, despite the fact, and I know it's just March and maybe things have changed, but it still looks pretty good. Like the urgent ones, are just are being completed within an hour, and then I guess the 5 hours is the time to resolve it. So I'm just trying to kind of understand, from a public point of view, if people ring and log a water leak, generally within the 72 hours or the 96 hours, we're fixing most of those. So people wouldn't be waiting for months or weeks and weeks having to put repeated requests in.
That's correct. We're on top of it at the moment.
Right. So that's
So there are not long wait times at the moment.
Yeah. So the key thing is for people to report.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then just coming back to the water supply safety plan, I see, sorry, I'm just flicking between the pages. I see that we've asked or kind of suggested that we would now be acting in accordance with the water supply plan 2021. Was that?
That's correct. So we are operating our network in accordance with our updated water safety plan. So that's the water safety plan that responds to the new framework that's released.
Okay, cool.
And we're not operating it in accordance with the so-called approved plan, which is now out of date.
So why do we not have to put chlorine into places in the Rafidi zone or the areas that we currently don't have chlorination in? Why do we not have to do that if we don't have an exemption and we're working under that plan?
Because the new standards haven't yet been released and are not in place. So Taumata Arawai are working on those new standards under the new legislation, and they were expecting to have them released earlier this year and effective from the 1st of July. Now they're expecting to be released within the next few weeks, and we expect them to take effect from later in the year. The date 15th of November has been mentioned, but not yet confirmed.
So when will we be able to take chlorine out of other water supply stations that we've done all the remedial work on?
So if the wellheads are secure, the suction tanks have passed inspection, and the reservoirs, and there is no unacceptable backflow risk in the zone, there is no chlorine. That's how the system is operated today.
So
So approximately 30% of the city, under normal demand conditions, has no chlorine. However, if we have higher demand over the summer, then we have to add back some of those wells that haven't yet been remediated, and some of those pump stations where we don't have sign-off on the suction tanks. And so there's more chlorine in the summer in high demand periods than there is in the winter.
Right. So what are the zones that currently don't have chlorine in them?
So that's up on the website and live every day, depending on the inspections and the operation. But at the moment, it's Brooklands, Kaianga, Rāwhiti. I think the northwest is almost entirely chlorine-free.
Right. And are those ones that have never had chlorine, even when we've had to put the temporary chlorine in? Or are they ones where we've actually been able to remove it?
Both.
Right.
So it's a mix of stations that have never had chlorine and stations where we've been able to turn the chlorine off as the remedial works have been completed.
So the whole issue with having, the drinking water assessor and an engineer sign off on something being secure
There's no more double sign-off of
is
wells.
no longer required. So the good news is if we do the work, we can take chlorine out of our water supply.
That's correct.
Right. Sorry.
Thanks. Phil.
So
Oh, sorry, Yanni.
oh yeah, cool. So that's really good. Do you know, just focusing on the central zone, because that's the biggest one as I understand it, what's the time frame for taking chlorine out?
I can't give you a fixed time frame on that until we've completed the reservoir inspection program. So the reservoir inspection program is underway, and of course most of our reservoirs are along the hills and feed back down into some of that central zone. One of the things that we are doing is the rezoning project, however. So the central zone is the largest zone, and we intend to carve that up into 3 or 4 smaller zones.
Which would mean that we can take chlorine out quicker because we don't have to fix the reservoirs.
We take it out zone by zone as we resolve all of the issues in each zone, yes.
So is there any opportunity to rezone something in the short term to get chlorine out quicker where we've got the suction tanks?
No, rezoning's not a short term. It's not a simple exercise. It's a major planning exercise, and then a capital projects to deliver the necessary infrastructure following it.
Right. Okay, just the final question from me is just the Bells Creek, the storm water filtration system. When are we likely to understand the value of that intervention and the sort of assessment of, how it's worked? Are we likely to get some sort of closeout report or some sort of, lessons learned or a sort of post operation report into its effectiveness? Because I know that was quite an expensive and new kind of thing that we were doing at the time, and it would just, I don't have any sense of how it's working, although I know there were some delays.
Yes, certainly I can ask the team to have a look at that. And one of the most important things, of course, is monitoring the water quality downstream.
Yeah.
And sometimes those natural systems take a while to respond. But yeah, I'll see what we've got to date,
Right,
and
okay.
whether or not there's enough data to show any trends.
Thanks, Helen. And also at the time when it went in, we weren't unsure what the OPEX would be on that as well. So is it worth putting a note in the resolution here that an update come to what would be the council now, or sometime within, what would be a good time frame?
Where are we? June.
Say by the end of the year or something?
No, we can say we can probably deliver that in September. We just need someone to go back and review the data, the monitoring data that we've got.
Put in there as a 2 that the committee requests a
Report on the operation and effectiveness of
the Bells Creek
the Bells Creek stormwater
filter. Lovely.
filtration device. Or treatment device is probably better.
Because how long ago did we put that in? It was maybe 4 years, maybe
It's a number of years, yes.
maybe 4 or 5. Yeah. See. Filtration device. Operation and water quality. Effectiveness. Okay, is that okay, Yanni? Thank you. Phil?
Sorry, Helen, just one more question. With with the devotionals one that's out at the moment, where we're going to do the new sewer system and pump it maybe onto the golf course and stuff like that,
Yeah.
this 3.7 million that's here for the membrane filtration upgrade, is that part of that money or is it on top of it?
Oh, I'd have to go back and check. So devotional wastewater.
Yeah, it's membrane filtration. It's improve the quality of the stuff from the devotional wastewater treatment plant. And
Yeah,
I just
it
want to know.
sounds as though it's just for the membrane filtration and not for the irrigation.
Yeah, so what I'm getting at is on top of the irrigation part of it.
I can check for you, but yes, that's certainly
Thank
what
you.
it looks like. Yep.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Helen. Just a quick question. I was looking at the Grampian pump station and note that it's got mitigation by chlorination, and it's obviously had the wells raised. Is that because of the work that's happening at Redwood being a...
I'd have to go and check what the so we have a whole decision tree for why chlorine is at any particular pump station. So I'd need to check whether it's the suction tank there or whether it's a neighbouring pump station.
Okay, thanks.
So would you just send a memo through to the committee in response to that at some point?
Does everybody want to know, or just a memo back or an email back to Mike?
Okay, that's fine. Everyone happy with that? Yep. All right. No more questions for Helen? Lovely. All right. Anyone want to move Helen's brilliant report? Sarah, seconded by Phil. Is there any debate or discussion? Rather than just saying thank you, Helen, what a really comprehensive report that is, and thank you for all the work on that and clarity.
Cheers.
Thank you for continued hard work. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye.